Okay, this lesson for the Cornet project class addresses a crisis of constructs. There's an incident approximately 17 minutes from here where I'm at right now in a place called Bologna, Arkansas, Beryl Baptist Church. Their pastor, Wade Lenz, Lenz. I'll include the reference, but he openly on social media platform, I think it's called Facebook. And the issue is he's gone from one camp to another camp. And it's similar to what Dr. James R. White wrote about King-James-Only-ISM, except the King James Bible is a product of formal equivalency. It's the Bible, the end result of all that God had done from the time the Bible was inspired to his providence over its preservation of that which we call inspiration. And it's much more substantial, that Bible, King James Bible as it's called, than a construct. And yet Calvinism only is quite a Calvinism only movement has begun. And it's also led to perhaps the most base expression, Category-Only-ISM, where if you're not using the jargon, you will be judged immediately. For example, I was accused, now again, accusation is from very illiterate people. I was accused of being a Calvinist. I think I used the word grace more than 3 times in a sermon. And I think after 3, you become a Calvinist or worthy to be accused. And then I was ridiculed by others. Again, their accusation is based on a lack of education for not being a Calvinist. So it seemed like whatever this construct was, it was the measure of all things, and it was by people that I noticed were quite illiterate. Now, had they been required, that is, if any church of which I'm aware had the formidable presence, authority, the awe and weight of an ecclesia like the Bible teaches, and those types were summoned to the front of the church, and we were to begin to discuss with me, for example, the pastor here in Jacksonville, Arkansas, just 17 minutes from Beryl Baptist Church in Bologna, Arkansas, then it would be quite destructive for them. That is, if they did not want to listen and notice that their construct was fallible, their accusation was unfounded, and that their education in the Bible was very much wanting. So let's just look at a couple of things before I read the account in Beryl Baptist. But to give you an idea on the category only, we were taught in the seminary, lexical support, use Bible categories. That's the systematic theologian, Dr. John Owen, unsurpassed in his excellency. He said, make sure you have lexical support. Let's stay with the actual Bible words, which we're here to learn, acknowledge them in their context, and then present them as they appear. So we're advancing Bible knowledge. So, for example, the construct Calvinism, when you just get to the letter T, and you all in this Cornet project class, you know what we ran into in Matthew 7:11. We get to this word, oneiroi, where he said, you all being evil men, it's plural. And he said, but while being evil ones, you have noticed and are always noticing to be giving good things. And he used the demonstration. That is, your child asks for bread, you don't give a stone. He asks for a fish, you don't give a serpent. So if we just said evil men, we would be perhaps in a friction immediately, because no consensus yet, of which I'm aware, of even the origin of the term depravity. It's a superordinate category. It's in our confessions, for example. It's well described and built, if you will. But as far as finding a word for it, but this is the text, Matthew chapter 7, verse 11, that provoked and found necessary for some Calvinists, whatever that is, to say, well, it's total depravity, but not utter depravity, because what do you do with a text where Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the one in whom the fullness of Godhead dwells bodily, is standing there saying, you all are being evil ones. But if you say men are evil and yet we notice how to do good things, that's problematic if you need people to not know how to do good things, which to believe Jesus Christ for everlasting life would be a good thing. It's commanded, it's lawful, and it's good. So you see the quandary immediately begins to quell the friction between the constructs and now the categories, because this can be devalued because it doesn't serve the purpose of supporting which means we have to first subordinate the Bible to support the fallible construct, which is the first infraction you'd never want to commit. So let's go look at Ephesians 1:4, and I'll be as quick as I can. This is one that people use to support something called eternal justification. No, Dr. James R. White's refuted eternal justification, but they teach eternal selection. That's what it is, eternal selection. Well, let's look at that for a moment. Paul had spoken. He chose us, reasoned us out for himself in him, speaking of Christ Jesus, which you enter Christ in time, and you do that by faith. And Paul said in Galatians 2:16, the causal adverb there, what caused him to enter Christ by faith was becoming one who has noticed that no kind of man is justified out from any kind of works of law except through faith of Jesus Christ. He said, then even we ourselves, speaking of those who trusted into Jesus. So he says here in Ephesians 1 pro, just a fragment of it, before kata, I'll just separate it, kataboles. This is before an establishment. Notice there's no article there. An establishment. There we go. Kataboles kosmu. And that's of no article there, a kind of order. Now the problem with this right now immediately is that this shows the kind of order that he was, as an apostle, establishing in the ecclesia, or as the ecclesia in Ephesus. And you can even read, referring to the foundation of the prophets, that is apostles. So it would be difficult to find a Calvinist wanting this, which is focused on that which is exclusively known in the ecclesia. And it wouldn't serve much for people who don't have interest in the ecclesia. Let's say you want your own independent ministry, you want to go out and do your own thing. Okay, so you could tout this, but you wouldn't be someone engaged in the process of establishing this kind of order that's only known in the ecclesia. Well, before we run off, let's just go and look at Hebrews 6. Well, remember, we're not allowed to do this if you're supporting your construct, because your source avoidance, which is based upon your bias, your source bias, both cognitive and affective, tells you, now, if it doesn't serve my interest, I don't want to hear about this being evil ones, but still having noticed and always noticing to be giving good things to my children, because that doesn't fit my whatever that is. I don't want to talk about the fact that I don't have a Strong's number. Let's just say that. What's a Strong's number? So that's just good things to ask, because it demonstrates that this is a construct. It is fallible. There's no text in the Bible that supports any fallible construct of any kind, whether it's Calvinism, Lutheranism, Arminianism, Molinism, or Pelagianism. Clamp. Don't forget clamp. And remember, at any given time, 80% of CLAMP, of the 5 camps to which I made reference, those constructs, oppose 20%. So it's always, if you want to hear a case against Lutheranism, study what Dr. James R. White, Calvinist, wrote. If you want to see what's wrong with Calvinism, read what Luther, Arminius, Molina, and Pelagius say. If you want to read what's wrong with all of them, read what. So it's quite a catalyst. But now here we have this fragment here, not, and then the word Pauline again, and then we have this interesting word here, the melion. That's foundation. Which, you notice, this is translated foundation. And so kataboles is translated foundation there, and yet the melion is the word foundation. And I don't have room, but I'll place it here. We'll notice this kata. Notice the word ball, B-A-L-L, omenoi. There. So this is, where it says not laying again a foundation of the doctrine of the principles of Christ, namely that mind in association or disassociation from dead works, and then faith toward God, upon God. So here we have establishing, just to stay consistent with that up there, establishing for yourselves, middle voice. There. So just this alone would not, I'm not sure who would be interested in this at all, to be quite honest. I taught so many years in a little classroom, a little board, and looked at the words. And when you find this word in noun form, you look for it in verb form, you go and correlate it, and you see if we can understand from the Bible what's referring and to what it's making reference. And so we notice here, it's not talking about before the creation, and that's not the word creation. It doesn't say there is word creation in the New Testament, verb and noun. And here we have a kind of order which is found in the ecclesia, and this is the book of the new covenant, our covenant, that we especially reference and learn from, so that we are there assured to serve the interest of Christ, which is that his Father received the glory, and that's by Christ Jesus in the ecclesia. We preach the gospel of the grace of God. Men thereby are persuaded. The Bible teaches that. We notice that God, as the sovereign, the one who reigns forever, the word reign is the term in the Bible, reigns forever. He's the one who revealed, as his son was on the earth, told us that Sodom was still able to be persuaded when God ended the time. We're time-bound creatures, so it's very pressing for us. Time is the large factor of the God who reigns. You know, trying to talk about time is like trying to argue a case for the water being used in the flood, because when I was a youngster, it was curious to me in this abstract philosophy class I was in at 18. Well, then why did God use a flood anyway? And he just blink and it'd be over with, and Noah not have to go through all that trouble. And yet that's strikingly presumptive to question, except we were in a philosophy class, so it made a lot of nonsense in that kind of environment. But God told us, Jesus told us in Revelation of the truth about Capernaum, that the time had been extended to where they were no longer able to be persuaded. And he expected them to repent, and highly railed upon them for not. And then in Revelation, it says that he gave Jezebel time in order that, very specific, the text says it was the purpose of that time was for her to repent, but she did not. So God's in control. God's Lord over time. He uses time for time-bound creatures, but yet in the midst of that time, while he was here, he revealed such gracious truths to tell us so that we wouldn't be simply tossed to and fro and victims of windows of time opening and closing arbitrarily. There's nothing arbitrary about it. He breaks into time and space, and came here to tell us the truth and to reveal to us what would otherwise be deprived. But now back to the thing that which we'll come to in the conclusion. This dear man wrote this Wade Lenz, L-E-N-Z. I often say that I didn't grab hold of the doctrines of grace. It grabbed hold of me and never let me go. I'll never forget where I was when this Bible doctrine arrested my entire being. He's talking like I felt when I was 9 years old in the church house where my father had taken me, and I heard that Jesus died for me. That was all I needed to hear. Finally, but I'd been in Bible school, vacation Bible school, Sunday school, Wednesday night, Sunday morning, Sunday night. So I'd been well immersed in the gospel. He says, I was in my pastor's study at Stanfill Baptist Church 10 years ago. Now, it may seem a bit of a surprise to some, but I embraced the doctrines of grace by reading the Bible and not a theological book. So I don't know what he's calling the doctrines of grace, but the Bible has a glorious teaching about the grace of God. And not a theological book. 10 years ago, I could tell you more about John R. Rice and his Sword of the Lord paper than I could about John Calvinist Institutes. Now, I haven't studied John R. Rice. I know of him. I have books that were there at the church house, Baptist church house. I've never read John Calvinist Institutes. I wouldn't know why. But it's been so time consuming studying Bible languages, hermeneutics, homiletics, systematic theology, church epistles, general epistles, studying the literature, the genres of the Bible, then going to classes where we were taught to translate, studying syntax and how to do lexical syntactical analysis. it never occurred to me to investigate something clumsy like these institutes. But you see, before I embraced the doctrines of grace, I hated it. Now, I have no idea what he's talking about. I've never experienced that. If he was primed to negate, we're trained to evaluate. And again, it would be remarkable if Beryl Baptist said, oh, well, let's get the pastor from Landmark and bring him over here and let Wade and Tim have a dialogue and let's see. Because I wouldn't have any emotional investment in it, nor would I have anything against the pastor there. I would want to help him. I don't. If they said, whose side are you on? I'd say, that's exactly right. I'm here on both sides to help your pastor and to help you all, because now there's people in the middle that are disillusioned and now being disenfranchised. And the last thing that a pastor has the prerogative to do is go in and presume to interpose that which is in a disruptive manner. It's just because he moved so radically from right to left or left to right, but really there was no left or right. He said, I preached against it in my pride. Behind the pulpit, I boasted. I'd never believed such a horrible doctrine. Sadly, as many young pastors are guilty of doing, I was guilty of repeating and regurgitating, as he now might be guilty of the same thing as he threw John R. Rice under the bus. I mean, I've never heard of this. It's, I've heard people pick on Baptist preachers and for whatever reason, but maybe there's nothing more to do out there. Did I actually study the tenets of this doctrine before I railed against it? Nope. His word. Certainly not thoroughly anyway. However, with the church members' encouragement, I studied the scriptures, took off the lens that has shaped my eyes to see things I wanted to see from a traditional people. Long story short, in my study, the Holy Spirit opened my eyes to God's sovereignty and salvation. I have no idea how that is something. We don't have a text where God dissuades someone, the Father of Jesus Christ dissuades someone from trust in his Son, Jesus Christ, for everlasting. Matter of fact, we have God the Father saying, this is my beloved Son, be listening to him. We have a text that says that God is always announcing alongside, that is the Father of Jesus Christ, for all men everywhere to be minding in association with specifically his Son and all that he accomplished. So I have no idea what this is about, but maybe they don't either, you see. We've learned blind spots and omissive errors. We've learned people are primed and charged to lash out before they might have enough data to notice there's no disparity between the assertions. He said, it's transformed my ministry into what I believe is more biblical, God-centered, Christ-exalting. Now, if it's God-centered, Christ-exalting, I don't know why he's introduced John Calvin. He has thrown John R. Rice out of the bus. Apparently, he feels bad for having thrown John Calvin. So his bus needs people under it for it to, I guess, travel. As time passed and the rumor mill spread in the pastor's circle I was in, folks started saying, well, Wade is one of those Calvinists. So now he's moved over to explain how he's being victimized, vitriolized, or negated, whatever that means. As if I was suddenly a leper. Well, it would be perplexing to anyone when people switch whatever they call they're doing. I'll never know. Again, I was accused of being a Calvinist by people that were biblically illiterate, and I was ridiculed for not being one by people who were just as biblically illiterate. So I guess apparently ignorance is the power and rather than the knowledge. So it says, I lost preaching engagement and those whom I would have called my friends. However, God in his grace and mercy introduced me to several other churches and a host of new pastor friends that have been such a help and an encouragement to me than they'll ever know. So this is exactly what you need to realize, is that this goes on out there. It's 17 minutes from here. Now this group of pastors are welcoming him into their camp. The others are expelling him, as he says. It's probably not how each person is experiencing it. But you notice they don't have the character to collaboratively reason and collectively learn, just as I've noticed, as I told my wife when I first went to her church, I said, I noticed you guys, a lot of your folks can just lash out, like Amalek, some pathological antagonism, just boom, emote, and no rhyme or reason, no orderly arrangement like this says. I can see why people don't really want to talk about establishing a kind of order, harmonious arrangement, especially that which is exclusively known in the ecclesia, because even in the ecclesia, they seem to have knowledge of how to disrupt. And now, again, King-James-Only-ISM, Construct-ONLY-ISM, and now Category-Only-ISM. So you can see how it degrades, but I'm not sure I'm ready to ridicule someone because they use a Bible, the last Bible before all of our modern technology came along and mass produced by machines and computers. I'm simply saying, but now I don't find it necessary to ridicule someone who doesn't know how to use their King James Bible. I teach people how to use it. We do it in this class, show the clues you can find in the text and opportunities to look things up to clarify. So that's enough, but just notice, just this alone would be an interesting study to notice how you can, as I would say, the same case against eternal justification, for example, would be the same as against eternal selection. And I don't mind adding that there just for clarity so people can understand what I'm referring to. So James R. White has the best case against this. All I'm doing is applying it here and using text to show it may not have been in the mind of those who were teaching, and especially when Paul told Timothy they were saved before the world began. He actually talks about prior to the ages of the ages, and he had mentioned in Ephesians, speaking of the ages to come, those were those subsequent ages that would reflect Christ and all that was accomplished and now being done on the earth, especially through the preaching of the gospel, baptizing those who believe it, bringing them together in a covenant relationship to participate in all the rights and privileges that they're unto and establish this kind of order. Also, Construct-Only-ISM. Now you can see the negative effects, what's going on at a church just nearby, a local Baptist church. And then, of course, Category-Only-ISM. If you don't use the right words, and or at least the sounds. Some people are just barely able to articulate the sounds, and that's enough to join the camp and just parrot, echo. So that's enough. But have a blessed day and be in prayer for Beryl Baptist Church. Let's always be in prayer for one another, especially you pastors out there of the Lord's New Testament Church, where people are pulling you to pick a side. Are you Calvinist, Lutheran, Arminius, Molina, and Pelagius? And there was a lot of truth in the Bible long before those. And those are, if you really review them, they don't seem to be men of any hard science background. So I'd recommend you move to a harder science, read Leibniz, people that invented or developed calculus, people like Newton that had a mind much more beyond some of the incestuous reasoning that's tethered to form categories and construct adherence and compliance. Because when I don't comply to a construct, people are adjudicating me and I could be the only one in the room that's actually complying and aligned faithfully with the text. So you have a blessed day.